Welcome back to Tongue of the Serpent. By now, the season has already taught us a few things about New Orleans, that objects remember, that bargains travel further than the people who make them, and that the city does not always distinguish between art and haunting. Sometimes music is just music. Sometimes it is memory with teeth. Tonight's story follows Jude Lacroix, a drifter and street musician who came to New Orleans the way so many people do, by accident at first, and then because the city decided not to let him go. He finds the instrument that seems too beautiful to leave behind. And in a place like this, that is usually the first mistake. This is the Bone Harp. There were places in New Orleans where the music never died. It lingered the way humidity lingered, close to the skin and mildly disrespectful. It threaded through alleyways and leaked from old buildings, caught in brick and iron like a tune that refused to end on the proper note. Most of the time, it was harmless. A saxophone riff clinging to a corner, a melody trailing after you for half a block before thinking better of it. But some songs were not harmless. Some songs did not want to be remembered. They wanted to be repeated. They wanted fresh hands, fresh mouths, fresh grief. They collected people the way certain streets collected puddles, quietly, inevitably, with the patience of something older than choice. Jude Lacroix was not from New Orleans. He wasn't even from the South. He had come down from Illinois with calloused hands, scuffed knuckles, and a talent for disappearing before trouble could properly introduce itself. Music had been his one clean escape since childhood. When he was a boy, he played a borrowed guitar behind the feed store whenever his father was busy drinking himself into fists. He learned early that a song could do two things: make you visible and make you safe for as long as it lasted. He left home at 17 with more momentum than plan. Freight trains, truck stops, street corners, $1 for a chorus, a bruise for bad luck. He learned how to read a crowd fast and leave faster. He learned that hunger was patient, pride expensive, and survival mostly a matter of moving on before anyone noticed you had stopped. He did not mean to end up in New Orleans. The city found him anyway. Before long, he was playing outside clubs on Frenchman Street, leaning against wrought iron fences while tourists dropped crumpled bills into his case. Some nights, a club owner would take pity and let him play inside. Jude told himself it was temporary. People always said that in New Orleans. Then they blinked and temporary had become a life. One night, after a particularly good haul, Jude wandered deeper into the quarter with that loose-limbed fatigue that comes from being noticed in the right way. The air was warm and damp with spilled beer, frying oil, perfume, and river rot. Somewhere nearby, a low blues tune throbbed like a heartbeat. Jude followed it. He had always been the sort of person who chased sound. Sound had fed him. Sound had saved him. On his better nights, it had made him feel like a person instead of a shadow. The tune led him down a narrower street, away from the easy lights and loud crowds. The quarter shifted around him, still familiar but slightly off, like a room rearranged in the dark. That was when he saw the shop. Lafleur's music, old and tucked away, as if it had been hiding for years and had only just now decided to be seen. The windows were cracked and fogged with dust. The sign above the door was faded almost past legibility. Jude did not remember ever seeing it before, and he trusted his memory of these streets. But the door was there, and the tune he had been following seemed to stop right at the threshold, waiting. He went in. The bell above the door gave a feeble chime, more sigh than welcome. Inside, the smoke smelled of varnish and something older beneath it. Damp wood, time, and the lingering ghost of smoke. It was cramped with brass instruments, dulled by age, warped violin cases stacked like coffins. Guitars hung along the walls like bodies laid out to dry. A few saxophones gleamed in the dim light, keys frozen mid-note. The shop was quiet in the particular way that meant it was listening. Something drew him toward the back, not loudly, just enough, with a pull subtle as gravity. Jude threaded his way past broken drumsticks, forgotten records, and a cracked photograph of a jazz legend smiling like fear had never touched him. Then he saw the harp. He stopped, breathing for a moment, which was a foolish habit, but beauty has always been good at theft. The harp was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its frame was polished from something pale and bone-like, smooth in a way that felt less crafted than grown. Neither polished wood nor ivy, but something organic, too perfect, as if it had once belonged to a living thing and simply kept being useful after death. The strings shimmered silver-white in the dim light, too bright to be gut, too fine to be wire. They looked like threads pulled from moonlight. Along the frame, figures had been carved in agonizing detail, bodies locked in dance, limbs twisted with movement, faces contorted in grief. Their eyes were hollow. Their mouths seemed open not in song, but in silent screaming. Jude should have stepped back. His fingers hovered near the strings, not touching, but close enough to feel warmth coming off the instrument, unsettling warmth, as if the harp had a pulse. "Don't touch it." The voice came from behind him, low and tired. Jude turned. An old man stood near the doorway, as though he had been there the whole time, and Jude had simply failed to notice him. His face was carved with years. His eyes were dark and still, full of the sort of depth that warned against looking too long. "What is it?" Jude asked. The old man looked past him at the harp. "A mistake," he said. "One that should have burned with this place." Only then did Jude notice the shop's old injuries. A darkened patch of ceiling, a scorch mark along the baseboard, that stale under-smell of fire that never quite leaves. "Why, keep it." The old man's mouth tightened. "It keeps itself." That should have been enough. It should have landed like a commandment. Instead, it only seemed to shove Jude 1 inch closer. He plucked a string. The note that rose into the room was not a note a human instrument should have been able to make. It was too deep, too full, too sorrowful. The string shivered, and the whole shop seemed to vibrate with it, as if the building itself had bones, and Jude had struck them. The sound held far too long, like a breath being pulled from a chest that did not want to surrender it. The room darkened. Not completely, just enough that the corners sharpened, just enough that the air grew dense with attention. A chill walked its fingers up Jude's spine. The old man exhaled in pure, exhausted disappointment. "You shouldn't have done that." Jude turned, fumbling for something to say and finding nothing useful. By the time he reached the front of the shop, the old man had already retreated behind the counter. Jude dragged crumpled bills from his pocket and laid them down in a clumsy stack, the closest thing he had to an apology. The old man looked at the money as if it insulted him, then pushed it back. "Take it," he said, "but don't say I didn't warn you." "You're just giving it to me?" "It was never mine," the old man said, "and it's decided you're careless." Jude lifted the harp. It was heavier than it looked. The frame was unnervingly warm against his skin. He carried it out into the night like a prize and a curse wrapped in the same shape. That night he dreamed of shadows, swaying to a melody he could not remember. When he woke, his fingers hurt as if they had been playing all night. By morning, his hands were already moving. He sat up fast, reached for the harp, and let his fingers find the strings before his thoughts caught up. The first note rose into the room like grief dressed in evening clothes. This was not his old style, not the rough-edged sound he had built on corners and in bars. This was older, more elegant, more wounded. Sorrow refined into something almost beautiful. The lamp on his dresser flickered. Jude stopped. The light steadied. He played again, and the room listened. That afternoon, he took the harp to Frenchman Street because the city had always been his stage, and because the instrument insisted on being heard. He set it down in his usual spot near a warm iron fence. Tourists glanced over. Locals barely looked. Then he played. The street changed. Not visibly, not all at once. It simply focused. Heads turned. Conversations thinned. A couple of tourists stopped smiling mid-sentence, as though they had forgotten the point. Then the locals felt it too. Bartenders with tendinitis, old musicians who had heard everything, buskers who knew how hard it was to hold a crowd. They slowed like people walking into a memory. Some wept without wiping their faces. Some backed away like they had seen something they did not want to explain later. Some only nodded, solemn and still, as if they recognized the tune from somewhere they had prayed never to revisit. By dusk, people were whispering. By the next night, club owners who used to step over Jude like he was part of the sidewalk were offering him sets, money, introductions, attention. Jude became famous in that distinctly New Orleans way, as a rumor first, then a spectacle, then a story people repeated to prove they had been there. A harp player with a sound that made grown men cry and women stare at their hands as if counting old mistakes. Jude told himself he was finally being seen. Being seen is not always a gift. Sometimes it is a hook. That night he set the harp down gently in his one-room flat and tried to sleep. In the corner, the shadows began to lengthen with intention. The first whisper woke him. He expected city noise, a neighbor, thunder somewhere upriver. Instead, the whisper came from inside the room itself, from the space between the harp's strings and the air around them. Jude sat up slowly, heart already hammering. The lamp flickered. The harp stood against the wall, pale and patient. He turned toward the mirror. Figures stood in the glass behind him, muted at first, then clearer. As his fear sharpened them, men in tattered suits, women with hair pinned in old styles, musicians holding ruined instruments, cracked horns, split violins, guitars with strings hanging like tendons. Their eyes were empty sockets. They watched him without blinking. Jude's mouth went dry. The harp shimmered faintly in the low light. That was when he felt the truth beneath the beauty. The music was not simply sad, it was hungry. It pushed at him, urged him toward the strings, toward more sound, more grief, more of whatever it took from him to play that way. He lunged for it. Jude wrapped the harp in a blanket and shoved it under the bed, as if that would count as solving something. He stood there, breathing hard, fists clenched, waiting for relief that never came. He could still hear it under his skin, a thrumming beneath thought, a melody scratching at the inside of his veins. His fingertips burned with phantom vibration. It felt like withdrawal, like the absence of applause, like not knowing who you were once the noise stopped. The next day, food tasted like paper. His own voice sounded thinner. He slept badly and dreamed of applause that did not sound like clapping. It sounded like crying. The nights worsened. The whispers came closer. The mirror filled. Then the storm arrived, heavy with lightning and confession. Jude sat by the window, staring at the shape beneath his bed. A knock at the door startled him so badly his heart seemed to trip. The lamp flickered. The shadows went still. He opened the door and found a man standing there like a punctuation mark. Ginger hair, immaculate beard, dark suit cut with old-world precision, Victorian elegance worn not as costume but as conviction. Even the rain-heavy air of the hall seemed to hesitate around him. The man stepped inside without invitation, as if the apartment had already agreed to make room. The temperature shifted. The lamp steadied. The shadows went silent, like children caught misbehaving. He removed his gloves, finger by finger, and looked at Jude with patient eyes that had seen too many endings. "You've been playing too long," he said. "Who the hell are you?" "Lucien Devereaux," the man replied, as if offering a business card. Something in Jude caught on the name. It wasn't exactly recognition, but he had the feeling that he should have expected it. Lucien's gaze moved to the bed, to the place where the harp was hidden. "It doesn't like staying with one soul for too long," he said. "It gets hungry." "I didn't steal it." "No," Lucien said. "You found it, or rather, it called to you. There's no real difference." "What is it?" Lucien crossed the room with the calm of a man moving through his own shop. He knelt beside the bed, reached under it without searching, and drew the harp out as if the instrument had already agreed to come. The blanket slipped away. The room crackled faintly. The mirror dimmed, bracing. Lucien brushed the frame lightly with his fingers, almost affectionate, almost clinical. "It carries songs," he said, "and it carries the people who played them." The figures gathered in the shadows again. "You fed it well," Lucien added, glancing at Jude. "Applause, grief, attention." "It made me famous." Lucien's expression suggested fame was a dull little currency. "It made you useful." Jude stepped forward. "No." Lucien lifted an eyebrow. "No? I'm not giving it up." Lucian's smile softened into velvet over steel. No one ever does. The harp began to ring without being played. Not with music exactly, but a low vibration like a throat clearing in the dark. The strings shimmered. The air thickened as if invisible bodies were crowding into the room. In the mirror, the dead stepped closer, their ruined instruments hanging in their hands like accusations. Jude lunged. His fingers closed around the frame, and pain shot through him, numb and bright, as if his hands were being erased from the inside out. The harp's weight doubled, then tripled. It became absurdly heavy, wet stone and grief and bone. He held on anyway. Lucian Devereaux did not struggle. He simply kept one hand on the instrument and waited with infuriating calm, like a man who knew hunger would do the work more efficiently than force. The vibration deepened. The lamp stuttered. The air thinned. Jude's grip failed because his hands stopped obeying him. The harp slid from his fingers with the smooth inevitability of a tide taking something back. Lucian caught it easily, as if it weighed nothing at all. Outside the apartment, there were muffled voices now. Neighbors. A crash somewhere down the hall. Someone complaining about the storm. Someone else annoyed by whatever strange sound had started leaking under Jude's door. Lucian adjusted the harp against his shoulder, as though settling an overexcited child. "It's time for it to move on," he said. Then the room gave a little shiver, the kind buildings give when reality slips an inch. When the neighbors finally forced the door open, they found only an empty room and the stale smell of old cigarettes. No Jude, no harp, only the faint echo of a melody lingering in the air, like mist over the Mississippi. A week later, a new musician appeared at a club on Bourbon Street. No advertisements, no announcements. He simply sat down beside the dim stage lights and lifted a heart made of bone into position, as if he had been born holding it. His fingers moved with practiced precision. His face looked drawn, exhausted, haunted by something that lived just behind the eyes and refused to be ignored. The first note hit the room, and every conversation died mid-sentence. People turned as if pulled. Tourists, locals, bartenders, the hard to impress and the already broken. A woman at the bar began to cry without understanding why. A man froze with his drink halfway to his mouth. The whole room listened with the strange, unwilling devotion of people who had already been chosen. At the back of the club, half hidden by the shadow of a support beam, Lucian Devereaux stood with his hat tipped just so, respectable, tired, responsible looking, like a man doing his job. Instruments like that did not belong to people. People belonged to their turns. In New Orleans, songs did not die. They changed hands. You've been listening to Tongue of the Serpent. That was the Bone Harp, a story about beauty, appetite, and the dangerous difference between being heard and being used. In New Orleans, music can sanctify, seduce, mourn, or devour, and the oldest songs are rarely done with the living just because one voice gives out. Until next time, listen closely, but not too closely. Not every instrument wants to be played. Some are listening for the next pair of hands.